I feel like last year was carbon, carbs, and cooling. I think this year is going to be salt because I feel like actually what was one of the biggest changes I made, and I got this off of, I'm good friends with Jeff. I always say he's like a really good friend of mine. I always say his name wrong. Mogavero, McGrath. Sorry, Jeff. Who came in second uh, at Javelina, and he had a really tough go at UTMB because his salt was so off. He actually ended up getting a salt test and found out that he was like a super heavy salt loss. I think it's like heavy sweater, but also like lost a lot of salt. And so he upped his salt intake by a lot. And then he like was able to pull off Javelina and is just doing so much better. And we actually have the same coach. And I'm struggling to get the person who does sweat testing in San Diego to respond to me. So if you listen to this podcast, respond to me, or I'm just gonna go drive to Phoenix. Um, my coach was like, because I did have a lot of stomach issues in the last two races. He was like, hey, increase your salt intake, especially with hurt to like how hot it is. And I started adding, I had a drink mix and I added another 500 milligrams of salt into that. And I think that was a huge difference maker in GI issues was that salt. So um, that's my hot take of the year is I feel like salt, I don't know what the other two S's are going to be. Salt, style, silliness, maybe, but I think it's going to be salt.
I would agree with that. Like, it's so interesting how, like, about the salt thing, because I've spoken to so many people in the past year or so about salt intake, and I heard about it through Jeff Browning and then Hayden Hawks and via Precision Hydration. Scratch does it as well in Boulder, and a lot of other places do. And like, it's so interesting because Browning was telling me about it. He's like, it's so useful, and I'm like, I don't know. It seems kind of like kind of go back to, like, I had like this idea in my head from like general nutritionists that like salt is bad because you're told like only have like 2,000 or so
Interesting.
milligrams a day. And I'm like, well, if I have more salt, like this is bad for me. But I was always cramping on runs and having issues. And long story short, I got a sweat test done. I was like, okay, I'm losing around 1,250 milligrams of sodium per liter, which is a lot.
Ooh,
And
that is a
so,
lot.
and like
Yeah.
most sports drinks aren't catered to a higher end. They're usually kind of in the middle or less. And like, because I used
Which
to think
makes
like,
sense, but yeah.
yeah, like for the general population, that kind of makes sense. But then you factor in, okay, like we're also doing extreme things. And also it's like everyone's a little bit different. And then so I did that test, and then like my running was just like night and day. And like I can go out and run in hot weather and not
Mm.
cramp. And then my recovery was better. Like all these different things because I was able to sleep at night because, like, for example, I'd go out and do a long run and then get home and cramp, and I'm just drinking
Mhm.
water and just losing electrolytes that way. And then I wouldn't sleep at night and it would just take forever to kind of reset. And it really sucked. Like I almost quit because of that. And so I think the salt thing
Oh,
is so like, it's so important, and but it's just good and goes back to like personalized nutrition, I guess, and how important that salt is. Because like with Jeff Mogavara, is that how you say his last name?
sorry, Jeff.
Sorry,
Jeff
we're gonna
M.
massacre it. I also have a lot of friends named Jeff, which is actually kind of funny. I don't know Jeff Mogavera at all, but it's just so interesting that he did that,
Oh,
and
he's the best.
he sounds awesome. And like I listened to his
Yeah.
podcast with Jeff from the free outside about that. It's so interesting because we all need to like personalize our salt intake, and like I know people who are like 400 or 500 milligrams per liter, and they don't really even think about it because they can get it from gels or whatever drink mix. But then like I've also met people that are like 2,000. So like they're up super high. And it's like, I don't even know how your body can process that much salt, but obviously like it's a thing. We're all just a little bit different. And we got to kind of just figure that out because it makes a huge difference. It's just one of those small things we can do. And I would say too, like based off your hot take on salt, that's going to be one of the S's for the year is salt, because we've seen so many people do it now. And like people that I don't think are even really that interested in nutrition are talking about like, oh, I got a salt test, I got a sweat test. And I've had multiple messages recently about that because everyone wants to kind of like find these little gains. And I wouldn't even call like a sweat test a
I'd say it's
marginal
a
gain.
big gain.
It's a huge
Yeah,
gain.
I'd say
Yeah,
it's a
for
big
sure.
gain. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just
Yeah, I
super
mean, I
interesting.
think of it, yeah, no, and it's again kind of the evolution of it. I did the Pinhoti Trail. I tried to do it self-supported And then ended up going back supported. And a lot of the reason why I failed on the self support is because I had heard, you're trying to like manage weight, etc. Well, it's super hot in Alabama, even though it was November, they had like huge heat wave. And I literally just brought a bag of salt because I'd heard like, oh, when you know, need salt, you'll reach for it and like stick your fingers in, then like lick the salt, and that's what you should do. And I ended up having massive issues with electrolyte imbalance and hydration, etc. And my husband still makes fun of me for doing that. He's like, "Oh yeah, remember that time you brought a bag of salt and thought that was gonna be good?" I'm like, yes, I know. But it's crazy. I mean, that was like yeah, it was 2020, fall of 2020, and now here we are with like sweat testing. And yeah, I don't think you have to be like, I do think sweat testing, honestly, and I applaud Precision and Scratch and kind of the companies that are making it easy to get that testing done. I think it's super cool.
Yeah, I agree because there's like this kind of dogma that's like, oh, well, your sweat changes based off of like temperature and all these different things, but really, like at least in my view and the data that I've seen is like it's genetic. Like they're spot on. Like I did two tests actually with Precision. So I did one, and then last year at Black Canyon, so in 2024, the Precision team was there, and we did another one, and like the numbers were within like I think 50 or 75 milligrams per liter.
Oh,
So it
nice.
was pretty close, even though I was dehydrated that day. And they did say that like it does change like a small amount, but in general though, you're in that range. And like just goes back to personalized nutrition. It's like if you can go back and check your blood glucose or your blood labs and do the sweat test for a couple $100, like yeah, it's $200, but it's better than just trying like every drink mix out there and wasting a year or two of your life. It's kind of like hiring a coach, I guess. Like you hire a coach
Yeah.
because like I don't know anything about like actual training. Like if I didn't have a coach telling me what to do, I'm like, well, I'm going to go run 7 miles today. I don't know. I guess I'm tapering. Like I don't know what to do. So same thing with nutrition. It's like if you can figure things out, it's worth the money because then your running is just better, like just flat out better, more enjoyable. You can get faster. And like honestly, like running faster and not feeling like crap is so much more fun than just kind of like slogging through a run. Like it's just so much more enjoyable.